are talking Founders Day, and this is directed by Erik Bloomquist, who also co-wrote this and also has a role in the movie. Now, this movie is comparable in some ways to the movie Scream. So what Scream did for the horror movie genre, Founders Day does for politics, or at least that is the attempt. So this is a slasher movie that takes place in a small American town where there is a kind of local mayor electoral battle. We have the mayor coming to the end of their term. We have a challenger, and that's the backdrop of this slasher movie. So people are divided. There's people on kind of either side, and it focuses on this kind of young girl who is in a relationship with the daughter of the challenger of the election, you might say. But she is murdered. The daughter of this kind of candidate is murdered by this masked killer, dressed up in a kind of founding father style costume. And this kind of sets in motion a variety of killings, with this masked killer seemingly killing political rivals and other people alike. What will happen? You will have to watch the movie and find out. So, let's discuss what I think works in this film. So obviously Scream came out in the 90s, but this film does have a very much a Scream aesthetic. You have that slightly kind of over-the-top aesthetic where people are kind of very much 90s is the best way I would describe it. This feels like a kind of 90s film. So if you are a fan of the Scream movies, especially the kind of the first couple of ones, then I think maybe you'll probably like this film. The film does have a sheen to it. Bloomquist has done a variety of movies before. I would say this maybe is the highest profile, and as such it has the kind of the sheen of a more of a polished movie. It doesn't have a great recognisable name of cast here. William Russ, who is always a kind of dependable sort of character actor, is the really only the name here that I kind of recognise, and I think he does a good job here. But it's a relatively large cast, but a cast of relative unknowns. But it still has a reasonable kind of production value. It looks like it's not a cheaply made film in some respects, in comparison to the horror movie independent genre, spectrum of films, if that makes sense. The film's kills are quite numerous. There are a good number of people that end up biting it, you might say, and the idea here of this killer dressed as a founding father, I have to say I quite liked the aesthetic. It looks pretty creepy. And there's this killer uses like a gavel with like a blade at the end. So we have these sort of somewhat themed killings, if that makes sense. And some of them are sort of fairly brutal. Weirdly, we have some that are shown on screen and some that aren't. Maybe they didn't have the budget to do all of them on screen. But when we do see it on screen, I think it looks suitably kind of violent and brutal. And obviously we have this political commentary, very much about a divided nation and everything like that, and there's different sides and how kind of these politicians are ultimately using situations for political gains and things like that, and how the situations are sort of manipulated and how people feel versus how they act. So there is something to be said for some social commentary there. What doesn't work in this movie, it's so reminiscent of Scream. It really is. It feels really like a Scream clone. So it's weird that it's come out, obviously, in a way that this much after Scream, but obviously we're there. America is a much more of a divided country nowadays, so in that respect, I suppose it does make sense. But nonetheless, the Scream aesthetic is very much there, and when you watch the movie, there's certain characters that seem like they're from a Scream movie. There's certain plot twists and plot reveals that I feel are straight out of a Scream movie, so it does feel a little bit derivative of the Scream franchise. Now let's talk about some of the tonal issues I have with this movie. the weird thing for me is that there's some aspects which are played relatively straight, but some of the characters are quite over the top, and you know, either go into massive stereotypes like these bullies, this couple which are kind of bullies, and they're just so like people that let's write a couple of bag side of the tracks kids, so just generic and over the top. And then we have these other characters which seem a little cartoonish, not like real people, especially the two the mayor candidates, the incumbent mayor and the you know, and the challenger, so to speak, just seem very cartoonish, and they're not played with any real dramatic sense or gravitas, which gives it this kind of cartoonish feel to it. But they're not the only ones. So the atmosphere here is one of mixed tones. The other thing I would say this movie it has a little bit of a problem with is the actual minutiae of the detail. So there's this film has quite a lot of moving parts in regards to its plot, but I have to say I think it's a rather muddled plot. At the end of it, you'll think, how have people got involved in this? Why have they got involved in this? What kind of motivations do they have? And you'll be asking yourself, I don't really feel that makes a lot of sense. Now, I'm not going to go into specifics because I don't want to give spoilers, but I really do feel this movie is quite a muddled script and doesn't really hold up under any type of scrutiny. So there is that. And as I've kind of alluded to, I think the movie is a little mixed on even its kills. We do see a couple of kills in relatively graphic detail, which do come across as effective, I feel. But there's also a lot of kills which are either off screen, or we kind of see like an obscured view, or the face of the killer where he's sort of stabbing someone. So it feels a little bit censored in some ways. But we do see a couple of scenes in others. Maybe it didn't want to go too graphic. I don't know. So overall, it's a watchable slasher film, and I think it does have a reasonable production value and an interesting concept mixing these political ideas. But the execution is a little muddled, and the tones are inconsistent as well, which to me makes this movie a little less interesting than it potentially could have been. I will give this a 4 out of 10, which is just slightly below average, really. I don't think it really stands out in any way. It just feels like it's more a missed opportunity, if anything. But there were some building blocks there, I think, that it could have been. Now, if you're just a slasher fan that likes to see a kind of masked killer killing people, and you're not too worried about the kind of the narrative and the intricacies of that, then you might enjoy it. I'll give it a 4 out of 10, as I've said. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Please do leave me a comment, and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.